Kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome back to Big Hairy News Tuesday edition with myself, Pink Pat, and regular Chewie.
Regular old standard issue Chewie here on
How
Tuesday.
are you, standard issue Tuesday, Chewie?
Yay! I'm not too bad. It's been a weird day. I don't know. People that work in customer service, hospo, you all know it. Sometimes it just comes in waves, and today definitely seemed to be that day.
2 days in a row with 3 biscuits.
Oh, just one biscuit today, thank you, love. Sorry about that, chat. It just seemed to be one of those days where it was my turn, that I had been selected by the great cosmic evil to deal with a bunch of weirdos today. It's been strange. Strange.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
We had some weird weather.
It'll be somebody else's term. It's been... like we were supposed to have snow. Snow didn't have. We got some hail at 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But it's been very brisk here in Dunedin. It is, of course, the perfect weather if you are waiting for your roof to be replaced. I have my whole house covered in scaffolding and that sort of thing. That was supposed to happen this week, so I'm guessing it's not happening till later on. So that's fun. And that's my story.
Cool. It's fun times being a house owner, right?
Yep, absolutely. If we
Yeah.
wanted to relate that to the government, what I've done is good borrowing. I've borrowed some money to invest in a physical thing that makes things better. I haven't borrowed money to go and buy lollies from the shop to give to people that I want to be my friends. That's the difference.
It's a great analogy. Fantastic analogy. Well, we have an exciting show tonight. We've got Robert Patman joining us in a second to talk about what's happening overseas at the moment. We've had some chats in the White House with leaders from across the mostly European Union, who are all part of the coalition of the willing. Yes, so we've all met in the White House now after, was it just Trump and Putin that met in Alaska? I don't think Zelensky was part of that. Yeah.
No,
So
because why would you have the leaders of both countries at war when you can just have one and you can just negotiate a peace treaty
you have a
without
mediator.
one of the affected parties being there? It's perfect. Big brain moment from Trump.
Yes, so that's going to be exciting. But before we get into that, let's just quickly say a big thank you to our patrons who make this all possible. If you would like to become a patron at patreon.com/bighairynews, you can hop on over there. You get things like sneak peeks of this guy. Pulled this out of my special drawer of things I'm only supposed to wear on special occasions, just for you guys. Sneak peeks of that sort of stuff, and any pre-recorded interviews also go on there as an exclusive for everyone else. Or you can head over to bhnshop.nz and purchase yourself some merchandise, of which there's some pretty cool stuff. There must be a few more of these because Pat hasn't removed it. But exclusive, may not come back. Limited edition, and then there's our 4 faces, which is our most recent. So thank you everyone who purchases and supports us on Patreon. You'll make it possible. We thank you. All right, shall we get our guest on to sink our teeth into what's happening around the world?
Absolutely.
Exciting, fun times. Please, everyone, I was going to say a big round of applause.
Put your hands together.
Put your hands together in your lounges for yourselves to welcome onto the stage Robert Patman, Professor of International Relations down at Otago, is it?
That's correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good to have you back.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Some exciting stuff happening overseas. We've seen some talks between, as Chewie just pointed out, Trump being the mediator between Russia and the Ukraine, which is interesting in and of itself. Any thoughts of what you've seen happen in the last 2 days or so?
Well, I think, Emily, it's a permissive understanding of mediation, because I think Mr. Trump is pretty aligned with Mr. Putin. And that's why he saw Putin first. And he actually is advocating a peace deal which involves the loss of territory which has been annexed by Russia since the invasion of February 2022. So, and what we had today in Washington was Zelensky arriving for his bilateral meeting with Mr. Trump, but also being joined in subsequently, the meeting was expanded to include a number of European leaders, including the head of NATO, and leaders such as Macron from France, Merz from Germany, Starmer from Britain, Stubb from Finland, Finland share this huge border with Russia. And by the way, he has quite a good relationship with Trump, and I think he's constantly telling Trump he shouldn't trust the Russians. So I'm not sure how much he's taking President Stubb's advice, but it's yeah. So what's coming out of this? I think the Europeans were quite fearful after that meeting at Alaska that Mr. Trump, the president, and his vice president, perhaps his Secretary of State, might gang up again against Zelensky. So what we understand from today's meeting is that in principle, Mr. Trump is now trying to arrange two things. He's trying to arrange a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin, which seems very logical on the face of it, because they're the two participants in this conflict. One country's invaded the other. So it might be a difficult meeting, not least because Mr. Putin's tried to assassinate Mr. Zelensky at least 3 times. So it'll be interesting to see what Zelensky says to him. And then there's a hope that after the bilateral meeting, if all goes well, that will be expanded into a trilateral meeting involving the president of Russia, the president of Ukraine, and also Mr. Trump, president of the United States. So that's what's panning out. It's interesting, though, there are still open differences between Mr. Trump's vision of peace and that of the Europeans. Merz corrected Trump at one point and said there must be a ceasefire. At the moment, Mr. Trump has, to give the viewers, listeners, the backdrop to this meeting in Alaska, Mr. Trump had expressed his frustration with Putin's continual bombing of Ukraine, as well as his continual encroachment on the country, and said nothing less than a ceasefire from his meeting from Mr. Putin would suffice. In other words, that was his bottom line. But as soon as he met Putin and laid down the red carpet for him, he suddenly changed his mind, which was a bit bewildering to many other people. And he suddenly adopted the Putin line that there doesn't need to be a ceasefire, there just needs to be a peace agreement, which addresses many of Russia's concerns. Most of those concerns center on retaining not only territory they've actually got in their possession, but also taking control of territory which is not under their control. So I think we have to be a bit skeptical, to sum up, about the prospects for peace at the moment. I don't doubt the sincerity of all involved, but let's be quite clear. We are talking about a situation whereby one party could bring peace within 12 hours by simply withdrawing his troops to the internationally recognized borders of Russia. That would bring peace. So that's not going to happen. And I have a feeling, I may be wrong, that there'll be backwards and forwards for about a week or so, but I'm not convinced that Mr. Putin wants to meet Zelensky. And let's hope he does. And let's hope they reach some sort of agreement. But it's going to be very difficult, I think, for Zelensky to accept any loss of territory through an illegal occupation of his country. I mean, just imagine how we would feel as a country if we lost part of an island, 2 islands that make our country. And the deal, somebody put it the other day, Mr. Trump keeps talking about a deal, but is a deal the way to address a situation where one party has transgressed international law? Shouldn't the outcome be that they simply start obeying international law and withdraw their troops back to their own country? I mean, that's logically the thing to do, but I mean, of course, logic and power politics don't always mix together.
Very, very true.
I found a lot of this just not even the negotiating or the meeting itself, but what happened around it to be really interesting. Like the fact that Zelensky didn't walk into this alone this time, that he was surrounded by what they're calling the coalition of the willing, and the fact that it was very much a coordinated charm offensive in the bluntest possible terms, that those guys walked in the room and very clearly had the idea that the way to handle Trump is to just flatter him in the most clumsy, over-the-top way. You know, this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for you, Mr. Trump, all of this sort of stuff. You've mentioned the president of Finland having a great relationship with him based around golf. And so he was the one that was fronting and dropping the big words like this war of aggression that Russia started. I think it shows that there is a united front in Europe. And I think that they are acknowledging that, historically, we have seen this before. If we appease this guy with some territorial gains, he will come back and see more. Whether Trump acknowledges that historical aspect to it for Europe or not, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. There's been 2 occasions when I've seen Trump very much ill at ease and nervous. And that's been the first big high-profile meeting with Putin in Helsinki in his first administration. That's when a journalist asked Trump whether he believed, the question to Mr. Trump was from a Los Angeles Times journalist was, have you had, do you believe the Russians interfered in the 2016 election? Trump flicked the question to Putin. And Putin said in Russian, no, of course not. And then Trump said he agreed with Putin. And so he overruled all his intelligence services, which has said that the Russians had interfered. This recent meeting in Alaska, I got the distinct feeling watching the 2 of them that it was Mr. Putin who had the swagger, not Trump. And it reminded me of a scene out of The Godfather where the lieutenant is looking after the boss. And I don't know what leverage Mr. Putin's got over Mr. Trump, but it's substantial. I can't quite work out whether it's just sort of hero worship, that Mr. Trump believes that Putin's a really tough guy and he admires him, or whether it goes much further and that there's some other reasons that he just feels he can't stand up to Trump. I mean, we are talking about the most powerful country in the world, which is given Putin, a war criminal, a mass murderer, a global stage. And it's not as if Russia's a superpower. It's not. It's only got an economy the size of Spain's. So it's quite puzzling in many respects. And I think Chewie's right. I think most Europeans are treading carefully in the hope they can gently nudge the President Trump, to a position that aligns with them. I mean, their position is basically that Putin is responsible for this and shouldn't be rewarded in any shape or form. And ultimately, if he doesn't leave, he'll have to be forced out. And I think it's going to be a difficult job to nudge Trump to accept that, because he's always clearly had a very big soft spot for Putin.
Yeah, I often get the sense that Trump thinks that Russia is still the Soviet Union. This massive like opponent to the US that has this enormous army, this massive nuclear arsenal, that can go toe to toe with America, and that just hasn't been the case for decades now. But he is still treating it like he is negotiating with the Soviet Union.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, interesting to see Lavrov, the foreign minister, arrive with USSR T-shirts, which was a nostalgic throwback to when there was the Soviet Union. And Putin basically does have considerable nostalgia himself for when Russia was the Soviet Union.
As he would. Good times.
Well, yeah, and I think most Ukrainians, by the way, it was very interesting reading about opinion in Ukraine in the last 2 days, because it appears that many Ukrainians feel really stabbed in the back by Trump. They were really expecting Trump to come down hard on Putin at that meeting in Alaska and apply what's called the sledgehammer sanctions. These sanctions have been much anticipated, not least by the Ukrainians, because they would have the potential to kill Russia's capacity to continue the war. Why? Because it would involve 500% tariffs on India and China, the countries which buy Russian oil. And Russia is totally dependent on those oil exports. So if these sanctions were applied, it would become unattractive for both India and China to continue buying Russian oil. And that's the idea. And so, and that's why the meeting in Alaska was done at Putin's initiative. And because he's very quick, he's trying to delay sanctions. But, you've got to hand it to Putin. He pulled off a huge win. He put off sanctions. He got Trump to stop talking about a ceasefire. And he's got Trump to basically accept the Russian version of how peace would be achieved. So from his point of view, it was a global success. I think, however, it may be a short-term victory, because I don't think the Europeans and Zelensky are going to go along with how Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin see the outcome.
Yeah, I saw a couple of more military-related announcements from Ukraine. Again, perfectly timed on the day of these negotiations. The Ukrainians unveiled a new cruise missile with an almost 2,000 kilometer range and a 1,000 kilogram warhead. So that puts Moscow in range. They also finally put out a commission a Russian oil pipeline, which I believe is the last one crossing their territory. So they've cut that as well. So, I mean, this is one of the things that I've always been fascinated whenever there's peace talks and that sort of thing, is looking at what is going on around it. What you saw a lot of Russian propaganda around this meeting in Alaska, where of course there were these news stories going, did you know in Alaska there's all these Russian Orthodox churches that are very old? I wonder why that is. Did you know that we used to own Alaska? So yeah, it's interesting how everybody sort of positions themselves around that sort of peace process or negotiation.
I mean, I think you've raised a really good point. What really struck me is the way that many people in the media, not all, but many people in the media always assume that a small country will be defeated by a big country in a protracted conflict, whereas in fact there's plenty of evidence small countries can and do beat bigger ones. Vietnam, the Soviet Union, Afghanistan. The United States didn't prevail in Iraq when it invaded in 2003. And if you actually stand back a moment, as a former Republican House of Representatives person said today, Putin's not winning. After all, he was supposed to seize the whole of Ukraine within a matter of days when he invaded in 2022. After 3 years, at the cost of more than 1 million Russian casualties, he's got 20% of the country. And he used the example of America's invasion of Iraq to illustrate the point. He said, just imagine, if we had invaded, as they did, Iraq in March 2003, and after 3 years, we'd only had 20% of the country, would we be seeing, and lost 1 million troops, would we be saying that's a great success? No, we wouldn't. But the dominant narrative is that Russia is winning. And you mentioned those missiles in the pipeline. I think the longer this goes on, the more difficult it's going to be for the Russians, not the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians, of course, do face real shortages of people to fight, because they're a much smaller country. They're still about 43 million, so they're quite a substantial country, but Russia's more than 140 million, so there's a bit of an imbalance there. But if they continue to get help from the Europeans, who have stepped up their game recently, I do think the Ukrainians have shown themselves to be fighting what analysts called asymmetrical war. They're not trying to fight the war on Russia's terms. They're trying to use drones. They're the world leader now in drones. And every night, and it's not hitting the headlines, they're hitting key points of Russian infrastructure. In the last
military
week,
targets.
Oil installations. Russia's lost, I think it's between 5 and 10% of its oil refining capacity in this year alone. So this is going to have a cumulative effect, because Russia's economy is in real trouble. It's stopped growing, and the inflation is rising. And in addition, interest rates are skyrocketing. And many Russian consumers are extremely upset about the shortages of things in the shops. So they have up to now relied heavily on China to support them. And but it seems to me that going forward, this idea that there must inevitably be territorial concessions is quite worrying, because I've heard a lot of journalists, both in the US and Europe, saying, well, Zelensky's going to have no choice. He's going to have to just concede that territory. And I don't actually see it that way, because I think it's a very bad precedent when someone uses force to change borders. If you look at it from the point of view of our country, we have a big stake in Putin failing, because should he succeed in getting the principle that might is right, that makes our life very difficult, particularly since China's one of the biggest backers of Russia. And the danger is that China may be emboldened by the example of Putin effectively stealing land from a neighbor and getting away with it.
Yeah.
And that's a big worry for smaller countries, which we do depend on rules and laws internationally, and so do countries like Australia and Canada, in a way that the bigger players like China and the United States don't. So there's quite a lot of it, although it's geographically a long way away, it's also close to home, because some of the key actors, such as China and India, are actually backing Russia in this conflict, which is, so if Putin gets what he wants, it will have implications for our neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure. There was, I don't want to keep you here, you've already given us quite a bit of time, which I really appreciate. There was just one other thing that came out of this last 2 days, and that was the Coalition of the Willing had a virtual call in between when Putin and Trump met in today's happenings in the White House. And there was a bit of a fuss because Luxon didn't appear to the 1 a.m. scheduled virtual meeting and instead sent some officials. Does that look bad for us if we didn't send our Prime Minister? I don't know whether or not I couldn't find information on who else was on that call other than the countries stated. But I don't think it looked great. I don't know. What's your opinion on that one?
Well, my view is it's a very important issue for this country for the reasons we've just gone through. And to be fair, both the Ardern and Hipkins-led Labour governments and now the Luxon government have been very supportive of Ukraine, and certainly take the European interpretation that Ukraine's territorial integrity and state sovereignty should be preserved in the outcome of this conflict. If it's settled, it should be done on the basis that respects the territory and the sovereignty of Ukraine. So I take it from what you've just told me, it was actually officials, that public servants who. I don't think that's good. I mean, I would have thought at the very least, either Mr. Peters or the defense minister should be present. We do need. There's a tendency in this country to assume, because we're a long way away from everyone, that it doesn't really matter. People don't notice our absence, but they do. And it's a shame, because we've actually been very supportive of Ukraine. We've contributed more than 135 million in humanitarian and military aid since the Russian invasion. We've always been outspoken in our opposition to the Russian invasion. But that on the face of it, not knowing the circumstances, I'm disappointed that the Prime Minister, didn't sit in for it. Was a Zoom meeting, I would assume, or something like that.
Yeah.
Teams meeting or something. I mean, I do think that's disappointing if that's the case. I don't know the full circumstances, but on the face of it, it does seem disappointing. Yes.
No, that is interesting. No. Anything else, Chewie? Very, very quickly, and we'll let Robert head off.
There was a question in here for you. Yes. Max asks, do you think, Robert, that we might see an invasion into one or some of the Baltic states? They are certainly gearing up heavily for war in appearance. I guess that would be your Lithuanias, and I guess at the other end of the scale, Poland is obviously, Lithuania and Estonia and Poland is gearing up in a massive way.
And so's Germany. I know Germany's further removed, but it's a very important country in Central Europe, or Western Europe, but very, very centered. I do think it's a really good question. I think countries like Finland and Sweden, which have traditionally been neutral, have now joined NATO. So they're extremely alarmed by the sense of impunity by which Putin has acted. And I think actually people closer to Russia take the view that he's not interested in any peaceful outcome. He's only interested in an outcome in which he achieves his goals. That is to say, he'll accept a diplomatic outcome if he can get the territories he wants. And of course, Crimea as well as part of eastern Ukraine. But I think many of those countries in the Baltic states, I remember talking recently to a colleague who's a professor at the University of Lithuania, and she was complaining that many of the countries in the Western world, and she included America here, were completely naive about Putin. And they said that Putin once described the collapse of the Soviet Union as a geopolitical catastrophe. And so I think people like Lavrov and Putin, who formative years were spent in the Soviet Union, I think their understanding of a great power is for Russia to reestablish itself, not just in Ukraine, but in neighboring countries. And that's been a historic goal going back to the Tsars. So I think the question is on point, because I think the big fear for the Europeans, and I certainly picked this up when I was in Germany in January, is that if Putin gets any sort of reward for his aggression in Ukraine, it will inevitably lead to pushing his luck elsewhere. It might be making territorial demand. I mean, what Mr. Trump is not really addressing at the moment, let's just say, for example, hypothetically, and this answers the sort of question that's been raised, Mr. Putin got what he wanted for regions of Ukraine plus Crimea. That's what he wants. And let's say we had an agreement in which that was agreed. 6 months later, Trump suddenly picks up the phone and says to President Trump, actually, I've decided I need a little bit more territory, or I need an enclave of Baltic states. And given his success in taking what he wanted before, he may be tempted to repeat the trick. So I do think, as we said earlier in this discussion, that many of the countries are looking at the outcome of the Ukraine conflict and seeing their fate linked to it. And yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things is that I have a feeling that if Putin started really making progress on the battlefield, and he's not making much progress, he's making slow progress, but taking very heavy casualties in the process. But should he sort of suddenly make a breakthrough, I think some of the surrounding countries might be tempted to intervene. But that hasn't happened yet. Yeah, I think the question is very much relevant. I think the countries surrounding Ukraine basically will only be satisfied with Putin's defeat because they'll see anything else as a threat, a potential threat to themselves.
Yeah.
I have seen one point of view put forward that Putin can't put this back in the toothpaste back in the tube because he's transitioned his country into a war economy. If they go out of that and their military industrial machinery sort of goes, oh, well, we're not replacing what we've lost. Well, we've got no work. And then you get all of these soldiers come back as well, looking for work, looking for money, and it's not there, and the country falls apart. So it's kind of like, well, this is our last chance and we can't back down.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of persuasiveness in that argument because I don't think, for Mr. Putin, he has no choice but to continue to pursue his objectives in Ukraine. He can't really withdraw. If he withdraws, he'll probably lose his life. He's not going to have a comfortable retirement in Crimea. He's murdered many of his opponents, and there's a lot of people hurting in Russia who will be looking to get their revenge when an opportunity presents it. It was very close to a coup last year in 2024 when Yevgeny Prigozhin moved against Putin. We don't know the exact circumstances why Prigozhin called off the coup, although it was going very successfully at first. But we do know he paid with his life when he called it off. Within 2 months, he was dead. And that's usually the fate for most people who have political ambitions, who seriously trouble Putin's power position. Also, unfortunately, means being an independent journalist in Russia is very dangerous as well.
They have a lot of unsafe windows.
Yeah, very unsafe windows. But coming back to your point, I think, Putin's got from his point of view, it's all or nothing. He must get those territories. If he fails to do so, I think one of his entourage may decide that they can do a better job than Putin at being Putin. So I don't know, but it seems to me he is, by invading Ukraine, he took a tremendous gamble. I don't think the gamble in the long term is going to work. But of course, for his nightmare was, why did he do it? He often points to NATO enlargement, but I think it had a lot to do with trying to run an authoritarian system, which he'd been in charge of for more than 25 years. And he was very worried about the developments in Ukraine, given the linguistic and people-to-people connections between the two countries. The thing that really frightens dictators is living next door to a democracy that is growing in confidence. And his nightmare scenario would be that young Russians would demand what young Ukrainians were experiencing, which was the ability to vote. It won't be lost to Russians, that young Russians, that while Putin's been in power, Ukraine's had 6 leaders. So, these sort of things do matter to dictators. And I think, he's taken a tremendous gamble. He probably thought it would work, that he could quickly eliminate or decapitate the Zelensky regime, take over the country. Whether he had the economic capacity to run Ukraine as well as Russia is another matter, but it looks like that gamble is unraveling. And I think it's a long way from being over, But I hope the peace initiative works. But to me, it's difficult. I can't see where the wiggle room is for Putin to make big concessions from his point of view, because authoritarian leaders, they often kill people to hang on to power, which means they're also vulnerable to the same process when their grip on power weakens.
Absolutely. No, it'd be interesting to see if anything comes of this. I think we're always hopeful, and time again we don't see much. But I guess we're all rooting for Ukraine, and hopefully something will come of the coalition of the willing, and hopefully we can do a very, very, very small part. But it's good to know that we're on board, and maybe our Prime Minister might show up next time. You've been very,
if
very
they schedule it
generous.
at a more convenient time.
If it's not at 1 o'clock in the morning, he needs his beauty sleep. You've been very generous with your time. We really appreciate your
Thanks,
expertise
Emily.
in this particular matter.
Thanks,
But we'll let
Julie.
you head off to your evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye bye for now.
I'd like to say a
so
big
very good.
welcome to a lot of new names in the chat that seem to be suspiciously flag waving for Russia. It seems very authentic and organic that they've all found themselves on our show
Interesting.
tonight.
Interesting.
Welcome. Or no, I was going to say Dos Vidania. It's too early for that, unless they're going to duck out now.
Yes, it's very interesting. You made the point before about it seems the narrative is that Russia is winning. There is, I feel like in the media, there's always a lot of influence. There's a lot of attention. I don't know, there was a word around the Ukraine side of things and sort of the Ukrainian casualties and how the territory. And I don't know if that's just because they've invaded Ukraine as opposed to the other way around, but I do wonder if the narrative does spin that way because we don't, with the regime in Russia, you don't have those independent journalists and you don't have people on the ground to, like at the very beginning we did have a wee bit of that where people were like showing what's the feeling in Russia, but we definitely haven't had a whole lot of that in the mainstream media as of late. So I do wonder if that sort of sort of focuses on that narrative or continues the narrative that Russia are on the winning side, I guess.
I think if I could put it in a nutshell, Russia is not winning this, but also neither is Ukraine.
Yeah.
Russia has a huge manpower advantage. Ukraine is having real trouble keeping people at the front. I saw something that was talking about the average age of a lot of the Ukrainians fighting, and it is my age. That a lot of the younger Ukrainians got out while the going was good, and some of them have come back and some of them haven't. Russia is having moderate difficulty fulfilling their troop needs, but they're going to very poor and isolated parts of their country. They're certainly not pulling from the more affluent. They're not kids from Moscow that are getting drafted and sent to the front. They're from the Far East, where a relatively small amount of money makes a big difference. So if you're going to sign a military contract, cool, your family gets provided for perhaps. But yeah, there are no Russian publicly available loss figures or that sort of thing. There doesn't seem to be any real attempt to recover even bodies from assaults that haven't worked. And they're running into just a truism of war, that it is easier to defend than attack. And the rough math on that is a defender will inflict casualties at an almost 2 or 3 to 1 ratio on an attacking force. And so all Ukraine is doing is trying to hold as long as it can and occasionally do some pretty spectacular operations at hitting, like Dr. Patman was talking about, oil storage facilities, airfields for bombers, really just asymmetrical targets, and they're hitting like what I would call valid military targets. Whereas what Russia seems to be doing is bombarding cities. And those are two very different objectives. You have, I guess, this has woken up Europe as well. For many, many years, they were happy to cruise on the amount of American equipment or bases that were still in Europe. They didn't have to manufacture a lot of artillery rounds because when are we ever going to need them? The French have spun up 4 different ammunition plants that they had in mothballs since the end of Cold War. Rheinmetall, one of the big German arms manufacturers, is talking about building a factory in Western Ukraine because they see an opportunity there. So the longer Ukraine can just hold and not collapse means there is more likely help coming for them to help them resist Russia than Russia is going to get somehow a big pledge of support and they can go on a more effective offensive. It's just not going to happen. But I think Russia is in that position that if they give up, there's a massive loss of face. There's the fact that their economy won't be able to sustain it. And the fact that Putin won't be able to go to his people and go, yeah, this was absolutely a win. We did everything that we wanted to do, because he doesn't. I don't think it's so much that Russia is looking at Estonia, Lithuania, Finland, all of that sort of thing. I actually think they're looking at the southern part of Ukraine because they want all that Donbass, Crimea, Azov area. But they also have a little parcel of land that they're interested in on the western border of Ukraine called Transnistria. And if they join those two areas, like you go down Odessa and you just have that whole Black Sea coast, I think that's what Russia wants. And if they get the Donbass, the areas that they're asking for here, they rest, they rearm, they re-equip, they go again. And that might be in 5 or 10 years' time if they get what they want. But at the end of the day, no one knows, because this is getting marionetted by a man whose one focus here is Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize, and that means I need one too. He's not invested in this. He's not coming at it from a point of view of like, hey, we need to finish this war, or it potentially ends up with American military lives dying in Europe again, which I think would be an honest appraisal of what could happen here. It is, I have a hole in my shelf for the Nobel Peace Prize I think I deserve.
Yeah. And the achievement of, hey, I did it with one of the world's biggest dictators, the modern day dictator. Yeah, no, it's absolutely all about Trump. It always has been. I think all of this showboating now is all about Trump. And what you were saying about the leaders all gassing him up, that was the funniest thing of just like, just before we start, thanks Trump for setting this up. I really appreciate it. Now let me say what I wanted to say. I feel so bad that they have to do that, but it's got to feel like such shit to do that to someone like Trump. But I guess you gotta play the game.
That's always been an aspect of diplomacy. I think what I'm getting a kick out of is how obvious and how heavy-handed and blunt that it has to be for it to soothe that man.
Yes, it reminded me a lot of the Moana Winston Peters. Yeah, the Moana Winston Peters, exactly the same sentiment of just like, no, I'm praising you. And then it was back to the hard questions. Oh, no, I'm It's just like, oh my God, you have to coddle the man just to get anywhere. Right, are we having a small break for some super chats, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. We will rip through them here. If there is a pink hat... What?
I thought I was doing it. You go ahead.
I'm right there. I'm doing it now. If there's a pink pat, is there a Chewie SpongeBob? Absolutely not. No. I ain't no sponge. Rajan, absence fee for yesterday. Tyler, the Creator show in Auckland was fucking incredible. Lost my voice from how much screaming I did last night. Live music is back, baby. Over Red Rover, Trump gets Nobel to prevent thrown chessboard. I actually read a story, I haven't looked into it, that they might have just ruled Trump out for a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not sure if that's true. I need to look into that. Peter says, Teddy Roosevelt's Nobel Prize for mediating the end of the Russo-Japanese War is on display in the White House. I suspect it'll end up in Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, along with everything not nailed down. That man will clean that house out. Trump putting the US into Russia and UK into Ukraine. Yeah. I know there's a lot of criticism of Keir Starmer. The only thing that I can say is at least he has been rock solid on support for Ukraine. UK has supported Ukraine wholeheartedly right from the start. And it hasn't mattered whether it's Tory or Labour or anything like that. It must be so gratifying for Ukraine to know that there's the consistent support, and a change of government isn't going to absolutely fuck them. And saying that Keir Starmer is a knob. I don't like him.
Whoa. We got zapped. Or did I get zapped? Did you get zapped? Oh, did you press a button?
I pressed a button.
That's okay. I think there was a delay between us, and I was going to suggest that one of us pull in and out. Anyway, so you've done great. You've fixed my issue.
I've done good. It's so smooth. New Zealand financial support for Ukraine, 168 million. Gaza for 37 million. Look, there are so many comparisons between these two struggles that just really annoy me. When Ukraine got invaded, we granted emergency visas to family members and refugees from Ukraine. There wasn't any question of it. New Zealand telco providers provided free calling for Ukrainians wanting to call home. We have materially provided military support to NATO for intelligence gathering out of Poland for the benefit of Ukraine. We have had, obviously, volunteers fighting over there. We've had all of these things happen. Gaza's harder. There is a whole lot more that we could have done to support the people of Gaza, the Palestinians. It annoys me. Kiwi Bird, welcome to the Russian chatbot. There's pretty obvious some heavy Russian talking points flying past in the chat. How's the borscht?
I'm sure they were. Nice. Well, our second story for the night. Our favourite two people, the back and forth, Nikki Noboats and Christopher Hipkins this time.
The noises I made when I read this story today.
There's a few things that there's a few reasons that Nikki Noboats, Nicola Willis, is in the news. The first one being that she accidentally stole the Prime Minister's spot on the tiles straight after the cabinet meeting. Walked straight into a bunch of mics and cameras, and you could just see the politicians behind her just like look and go, oh shit. And then the Prime Minister walks out, and the footage from his interviews is like the zooming in and like the microphones getting up close. It was fucking hilarious, which is funny because this has just come out directly after she's been overseas doing something, I don't know, speaking to investors in I don't know, somewhere. I think she was over in the UK, and apparently there was whispers in the room that they were perhaps looking at the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. So the fact that she's come out and taken a spot, that's absolutely unintentional, which I genuinely believe. I think she just made a mistake, but it's not a great look after that's come out. And the next part of it is her coming out swinging after swinging after at Chris Hipkins, accusing Labour of fiscal innumeracy. And there's sort of a back and forth here that, yeah, after she, her government spent $671 million on no boats, nothing. And
yeah, I think if
apparently
I'd
have
spunked that
no
much
boat
money up
for
against the
next
wall, I would
God knows how
shut
many
my
years.
mouth. Oh,
so
that's
big-
such an
big
own
words.
goal.
And it's especially hilarious because of the. I was wondering if there doesn't seem to be any response from the Sunday Star Times article directly, but they're definitely not well liked. We talked about this yesterday, but when I saw the headline that there was rumors that she would be the next prime minister, I put out a post on Blue Sky. I was basically like, I will champion this because that article just said that she has a 0.2% favorability and that Erica Stanford is second at 0.7%. So she's even less liked than the next after Luxon. So I was like, you know what? Put an incompetent leader in there that no one likes because it's just going to hopefully have the other side win. So yeah, interesting. But I'll play this wee back and forth. The questions that were asked, it was sort of someone slinging things back and slinging things the other way. But the thing I really wanted to have probably you, Chewie, because you know a lot more about this than I do. At the end, there's a bit of a remark about perhaps Labour should look at its history and perhaps look at what Michael Cullen did and his great fiscal history. But even that I had a look into, and I was like, which one is she talking about? Because it looks like he may have had some ideas that perhaps the current Labour government might be looking at. Who knows? But I'll flick through to good old Chris Hippie. It's like 2.5 minutes long, so I'll play as much as necessary to.
For New Zealand.
What I said this morning was that we need to differentiate the conversation around debt. Long-term assets do need to be funded somehow. The government talk a big game on infrastructure and they think that they can deliver more infrastructure by spending less. The reality is they're actually delivering less infrastructure.
We are effectively borrowing to invest in hospitals, schools and roads, and we will continue to do so, which is why we're not saying debt should get to zero, it should be at a healthier level. Our government's view is that we need to be responsible with debt management so those costs don't spiral out of control. I also want to note that the credit rating agency Fitch yesterday confirmed our AA+ rating. This is...
Didn't it get downgraded from a AAA+ or something like that? Or a AAA not?
Correct. Both times it's been downgraded, it's been under a national government.
Oh, but it's okay because it's still AA+, which is not a bad one, but it was AAA. So it's kind of a funny one to... Yes, it's a funny one to bring up. And I don't know if it's like I'm obviously very ignorant to this. I don't know if it's like it's, split in hairs and it's like, meh, AAA's like the absolute best, but if you get downgraded one grade, it's not a big deal. It might be just like something that you've done. I don't personally know, but to be like, oh, we're at AA+, it's like, yeah, but under you, we went down a grade, so... I don't think I would be harping on about that too much or calling it a win if that's the case. What you got there?
Yeah, I think Chris is right. There needs to be a more honest discussion about government debt and what that means. And I think we have fallen into a trap of, I've mentioned this a couple of times before. We seem to be one of the few countries on the earth that gets really caught up with our debt to GDP ratio, and somehow mythically getting to the place of being able to pay this money off. There is, just like in your own personal life, there is good borrowing and there is bad borrowing. The analogy I used at the start of the start of the show, it is fine for me to borrow money to make my home more efficient and give it a new roof so it doesn't fall down. That is good debt. It improves the asset that I own. It would be bad if I went to the bank and got a big loan and bought lollies with it to make friends with people. That would be bad. That is effectively what this government did. It borrowed more money in a shorter period of time than Grant Robertson's turn at finance minister. And what did they do with it? They gave it to landlords. They've given tax cuts to tobacco companies, to mining companies. And she's talking about these assets. She's talking about these assets that we're buying. The Dunedin Hospital's on fucking pause again. They want us to fist fight Nelson for the right for a hospital. Hospital infrastructure from one end of the country to the other is falling apart. If the national government went, hey, look, we've got historically low debt levels, so we're going to borrow a bunch so we can build a chain of hospitals from one end of the country to the other, you wouldn't hear shit out of me. That's a great idea. But that's not what happened.
They're not investing in public services. They're investing in the things that are going to make us more productive, like roads, because apparently more highways means more productivity. It's interesting you mentioned
but sure.
Good debt and bad debt. We'll continue this because I think Chippy might bring it up as well.
Because it affects not only the cost which New Zealand can borrow from the world, but also the cost that everyone with a credit card debt, a mortgage or a loan pays for their debt in New Zealand. And our government is taking a responsible approach to managing the finances so that those costs don't rise for New Zealanders. The biggest risk to New Zealand's rating and therefore our debt servicing costs is a walk away from the culture of fiscal responsibility that has characterised our country. It is very clear to me that Chris Hipkins is laying his stake in the ground, that he is prepared to walk away from that. I want to warn him against that, because every New Zealander will pay the price if a Labour Greens government puts our fiscal reputation at risk, and frankly, even if they campaign on ludicrous promises that will put New Zealand in poor standing.
Nicola Willis is... I'll continue on in a second, but I find it interesting. Again, I'm ignorant to this. Is our AA+ rating really that bad? Like, if it was tanking under a government, I'd be like, sure, like, we've gone down 3 ratings. Maybe we should start to look at it. But, like, sure, under National, it pretty quickly tanked a down rate, like, it went down a little bit. And sure, it's not going down. It seems to be stayed pretty steady. And, like, I don't know whether a AA+ and a AAA is really that much different. But yeah, I don't know. I think if I was looking at a B after we'd hit a AAA, I'd be like, ugh, yeah, maybe we really should be worried about this. But this idea that, like, fiscal responsibility, we've got to keep our AA+ sort of bullshit.
I think you can only really use a gauge by looking at John Key's government reaction when it happened to them. And they very clearly went, oh, this ain't shit. Never mind. Don't even pay any attention to it. I think, look, it does matter, but I think it matters if it's a trend. I think what National are worried about here is that this is happening under their watch. And there's only so long that you can blame Labour for. And I think at this point...
Oh, they're going to do it all the way to the election, baby. They keep doing it. They've even said, like, we're responsible now, and they continue to say, blame Labour. They're fiscally innumerate. This is all their fault. They're idiots. It's just... the two things don't add up, and I think that's what the Star Times article was saying. It's like, we're hearing things, and they keep saying things, but the proof's in the pudding, and we're saying shit. Like, we're not getting any better. We're not seeing the things that you keep saying to us.
And I think the most galling thing is this is, of course, what economists told them was going to happen. But this is a government that's happy to cruise on the fact, like, we're bringing interest rates down. We've done that, which is something that a government has very little effect on. In a trading country like New Zealand, we are just seeing the same trends that other countries are seeing post-pandemic. But these are the guys that blame Jacinda for the international interest rates going up. So I think they think that they're magic. That's the only that it's all Nicola's done this, but anything bad, Nicola hasn't done this.
No, couldn't possibly. Well, let's see what the Chris Hipkins has to respond to.
That will put New Zealand in poor standing.
Nicola Willis says, though, that you have opposed every attempt that they've made to try and get the books back in order to cut public spending and the like. So how do your words ring through?
Well, if she means we oppose the $3 billion tax cuts for landlord, the $200 million tax cut, $300 million now tax cut for tobacco companies, the $500 million for tech giants like Facebook and Google, yes, we did oppose those things. That's all money that could be better used actually dealing with the government's budget deficit.
Chris Hipkins.
Good job, Chris.
Boom. Just fucking
Boom,
kick the
boom,
mic
boom,
stand
boom.
over at that point.
That's what you
Done.
need. Clear, concise. There you go. Your 3 things to remind people about. And I'm sure there's more. You could have added the boats. I think that was probably better than meta. I think that was the boats should have gone there instead. That would have been my choice, but that's all right. And then we throw it back to Nicola for this last little bit, which she says that Labour should perhaps look to its predecessors, to its history, because Michael Cullen did such a great job.
Budget deficit.
Chris Hipkins needs to read an economics textbook and read a bit about his history, because Michael Cullen would never have allowed for the fiscally reckless approach that Chris Hipkins has been signalling.
So the reckless, as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, the what was it? Reckless fiscal approach that they've been signalling. What have they been signaling? What have we been pushing them to say? What is that? What is that thing? What is it? Is it tax reform? Is it capital gains tax?
This is
Interesting.
There's so much in that one little clip.
I
Chris
know.
Hipkins needs to read a textbook. Oh, really? Ms. No Boats? A textbook like you read? When you got your qualification in English literature? Is it that one?
In fairness, Michael Cullen's was history major, and Grant Robertson is also an arts major of sorts. However, I do know, and I couldn't find it for Michael Cullen, Grant Robertson was backed and had a wonderful aide, a brilliant economist in his ear called Craig Rooney, and he's got some great ideas, and we also got through the pandemic pretty well, so an art degree is not a terrible thing. I think it's depending on how you use that and who you listen to back up that qualification, I guess.
I think it very much goes in the camp of like, if things are going well, we'll ignore it. If things are going very badly, it becomes a factor. But yeah, that's just a... And to turn around and summon Michael Cullen. So Michael Cullen, the financial genius that he was, every time National has been at the wheel, they have attacked what Michael Cullen set up. They have treated the Cullen Fund like a fucking piggy bank. They have cut away New Zealanders' support from KiwiSaver, which is another Michael Cullen initiative. So for her to bring those up is amazing. And I think, I didn't see this clip. I don't know if there's more of it. I assume after she's finished speaking, all of the reporters go, Ms. Willis, about the ferries, the $700 million. Are you going to resign? Are you resigning today, or are you going to resign tomorrow? I assume that happened in the stand-up.
I would love to see reporters.
Crickets?
It's such an easy win, and I like if they did say it, I'm pretty damn sure it would be in that little piece there. But it's such an easy own to be like fiscal responsibility. Just a reminder, you did spend 700. Well, we actually saved 150 million because we budgeted 300 million for the cancellation fee, and it was 150 million dollars less. So that's a win. And it's like, no, you can't fucking spend that. It's still 700 million dollars for nothing. when we could have had a boat next year. And that could have been a political win for you, because you could have just claimed it as a victory for yourselves and you didn't fucking do shit. You're so fucking stupid. Even I can see that that's a dumb fucking move.
It is. I think the combination, like the point that I saw on Blue Sky, I think Paul LeComte pointed this out to me, that money for the ferries is one whole year of the education budget. Poof, gone. Why is she not being dragged down the street while we pelt her with fruit and vegetables? It baffles me. It absolutely baffles me that she's getting away from it and the government isn't absolutely getting crucified on this single issue. But even if it wasn't just the single issue, to have that playing out while the government cries poor to nurses and teachers, while they're offering them a pay cut and then lying about how much they get paid to the population, so we all think that every teacher that's been working for more than 10 years lives in a fucking mansion. Like, the combination of this sort of stuff is baffling. The thing I've been trying to get to, Ems, because we started talking about debt to GDP, right?
Yes.
I found this chart. Now, you might need to have this on a
please.
big screen. You might need to have this on a big screen. It's a good graphic on a computer monitor. I honestly don't know how it's going to show up here. But I want you to hold in your mind what you think of as a successful, developed country with a good economy, right? And look at their debt loading. So Sudan's not having a good time, not a great example. But just above them, Japan. Their debt is at 235% of their massive GDP, right?
And they've been in a
But they
depression
keep
for a
on
long
paying it
time
back.
as well, right?
Yeah. It's essentially, it's a money go round though, right? You pay it back, you borrow some more, that things are getting built. It's all fine. Singapore, like, bad example, Greece. Greece almost folded 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Which
But
honestly,
you are
if
seeing
that's the
a
case,
lot of,
142%, that's doing well, I guess. Japan hasn't collapsed, so they're at 200%.
your second, your third row here, Ukraine in an active war, 110%. Belgium, France, China, 96%. What's awesome about this, New Zealand isn't on this chart.
Oh, is it not?
No, because our debt loading is 55%, I believe. So we don't even fit on this. So any government that says, hey, look, our debt is really worrying, if they are talking about the national debt, they are wrong. If they are talking about our own personal debt loading, our mortgages, our credit cards, that is more of a concern. And we have got ourselves in that position because we're all mortgaged up to the eyeballs because of the global financial crisis, because of the way that we've structured our economy to buy and sell old houses to each other, and all of that sort of thing. We are mortgaged up to our fucking eyeballs. But the country itself is doing well. The country itself could go, hey, there's a massive pandemic and we need to give a flow of money out to the population. We can do that. We can borrow to do that. We need to spend some money on some 50-year infrastructure, like a series of hospitals or a couple of ferries that we've worked out. We can do that. But that only works if there's honest discussions with the population so they know that running a country is not the same as running a household. Every time a finance minister gets up there and talks about balancing the checkbook, we can't buy nice things on a credit card, they are lying to you and they are treating you like an idiot. That always sets off warning bells for me.
I did a bit of a thing because I'm a newbie. I'm not a newbie, I'm a newbie. I'm a noob when it comes to politics, and there's many things. I remember one of our road trips of times I was doing BHN, and I realized I didn't know shit about economics or our like a political past, because I really only started paying attention in 2016 when it was the Trump Hillary and then Jacinda elections. And so I got my partner to read the wiki pages of a bunch of people that you guys have mentioned in the past, like Michael Cullen and Roger Douglas and Roger Nomics and Ruth Richardson, all of those things, which is great. But something I like to do is when someone that I'm vaguely familiar with gets mentioned, is I was like, this is interesting. I wonder what their policies were. So on the things of current Labour. Signalling that they're going to do tax reform, and we're hoping to see either a capital gains or a wealth tax, some kind of tax, some sort of asset-based tax. I did a little bit of a quick search. What was Michael Cullen's view on taxes? And this is 2018. He passed away in 2021. He got a diagnosis and passed away quite quickly, and also wrote a memoir, which I'm quite interested to read. But he was at some kind of conference down in Queenstown at the time, and he had some interesting things to say about taxes. One of the things was New Zealand had a very narrow range of taxes by international standards. The most obvious area of narrowness is the very limited scope of our current capital gains tax regime. That reflects a long New Zealand tradition, the basis of which is hard to discern. He criticised media commentators for a strong tendency to confuse discussions with decisions having already been made on capital gains tax, it is. It's not hugely common in this part of the world. The possible alternative of a tax on financial transactions could be a bit different. Not hugely common in this part of the world and hasn't been a real part of the discussion to date, but obviously all things are on the table. Capital gains taxes typically didn't collect a whole lot of tax and were complex to implement and for taxpayers. The traditional thinking has been the cost-benefit analysis is marginal. But even still, some would argue that trends in tax rates and types of tax offshore may also necessitate similar changes in New Zealand. Most commonly cited is the downward trend in company tax rates, which means our rate is now slightly above the OECD average. But he said the New Zealand 28% company tax was not as high as it might seem, given other charges that applied in other countries, and that was that the evidence of a link between company tax and economic performance was very weak. So he said a bunch of things, but generally speaking, is that he was very pro some kind of tax, and that we were quite limited. Things of all this means the possible use of the system to change people's behaviour in ways which increase the well-being of all of us is very much on the agenda at this present time. So talking about the environmental changes and perhaps taxing people for carbon emissions, all those sorts of things. I think he was I don't know when he came out of politics, but he certainly had lots of things. He was floating some ideas around tax as part of the tax working group. And I found something that was saying that he described himself as a social democrat. So I think he would be somewhat favourable of what Labour are proposing, considering this is the guy who set up KiwiSaver, and it sounded like later on in his political career he was definitely part of the wonderings of what New Zealand could do in terms of tax. So I think throwing Cullen's name in there may not have been a great idea.
No,
maybe.
No,
I don't know.
Look,
when it's her coming from her, I guess.
Cullen's a hugely important person because, again, you've got to put it in its historical context. The Helen Clark government came in after years and years and years of national cut. And he was a hugely effective finance minister and delivered multiple budget surpluses in a row. and had a real long-term view. He identified that there was a problem that New Zealanders didn't save for retirement, and with our aging population, we wouldn't have the ability to maintain the super fund. That there would be too many people drawing on it, and there wouldn't be enough money. Now, remember, we've had conversations about that recently, about having to put up the retirement age because of that bump. His view was that if we could get KiwiSaver cranking, if we could have that government investment fund paying into the super fund to top it up, that we would not have to touch the retirement age. The problem is, because he was so focused on that budget surplus, multiple surpluses delivered in a row, it handed National a weapon. It handed National the line, this government has surpluses, but isn't cutting tax on you. And that was something that was a very effective message for National. Cullen dipped out basically at the same time that Helen Clark did when she lost. And then we had National come in and start cutting into that KiwiSaver, started raiding the Cullen Fund for their pet projects. Labor gets in again, they try to build that up again. National comes back in again, starts doing the same thing. Cuts to KiwiSaver, cuts raiding the Cullen Fund. All of these bits of long-term thinking, National cut away to get the short-term sugar hits. And now we're in that position of people going, well, we don't know how to fund the super fund, so I guess everybody's working till 71. And I would imagine that that is almost the first cab off the rank if National get back in. And at that point, I would be suggesting a rather French response to that suggestion. We start flipping over burning cars in the street. But yeah, I love that you're looking at these historical seems to be the wrong word when you can see them on colour television footage, but historical figures that have led us to this point in our politics, because the things that they set in motion do persist for decades. They have a ripple effect and a carry-on effect that you go, well, why is this guy such a bastard? Right, well, for that we need to understand historical bastards of the past. So, yeah, no, I love that you're doing that, Emily. That's awesome.
Of historical bastards. I'll just quickly show you this as well, because I think this is quite interesting, that I found. So you were talking about the retirement age, which people were pressing to push up, but instead introduce superannuation fund, so help with retirement. Obviously, we know about that. Not the only such investment. Cullen pragmatically renationalised Air New Zealand and KiwiRail after private businesses failed them, and agreed to establish a government-owned Kiwi bank.
So you see why I'm a fan, right? Nationalise it. Nationalise it. Nationalise the power companies. Break up the supermarket duopolies.
I think this is quite an interesting one. So his general fiscal stance was conservative, and he introduced the debt to GDP ratio to reduced it to about 8%, which proved prudent given the key English government much room to move during the global financial crisis. There is a sense in which Cullen saved us from the severe austerianism, which
just say austerity.
Many other.
Why would you?
I don't know. Which bedeviled many other economies. Although no doubt he would acknowledge Bill English's contribution. He made minor improvements to taxation on private savings, although more could be done. His big contribution was KiwiSaver. So he's not exactly. He himself described in his memoir that he was socially democratic, or social democrat. Here he's described as conservative, but still did things like he brought back some of our private, KiwiRail and New Zealand were brought back into the public ownership. So I don't see the parallels between what Nikki's doing. And she didn't say
That's
that. She
'cause
said
there are
maybe
none.
Labour should look at it. But I think to be saying that Labour should be looking at Cullen is, I don't know, it's a bit big-headed when you've just wasted $700 million.
Yeah, it's absolute nonsense. Look, I want from our media what we saw at the Putin-Trump press conference in Alaska, where one very brave reporter just yells out at Putin, "When are you going to stop killing civilians?" I want that level of energy into any press conference that Willis has. Like, I'm announcing this new raft of blah, blah, blah. Where are our ferries? $700 million. Explain yourself. I want that. But yeah, it's the other takeaway here is to see how clearly the fact that Labour are refusing to say anything about their potential tax policy at this point is the right thing to do. Tactically, strategically, for Labour, letting National spin and just try and go, well, they're going to do it. They haven't said anything, but they're absolutely going to. National have nothing to draw focus away from these things. The teachers' strike, the nurses' strike, the ferries not being there. The massive waste of taxpayers' money that is this government. They would love Labour to come out and say any sort of progressive tax policy, because National would then go, see, look, they're doing tax like we always said they would. So Labour is doing the smart thing, in my opinion, here.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't a strategy that I had thought. It's not an idea that I had come past my mind, and I don't know who pointed it out, but I did see a post which pointed it out, that without them having concrete policies, National really have nothing to go after.
They're just
and I do think
throwing shit at a wall.
Yeah, I think we keep going, announce it, show that you've got ground. But I think we do have to remember we're lost in the source in our politics, and what do you call it, political tragics. But we do need to remember that the public does have a very short memory, so they could wait till like Jacinda did it. She won within like 3 weeks, which was crazy. Like, people do have short memories, and there is a chance that if they wait long enough, they can pull it off. I don't know. I'm not a strategist, so I don't know. But I think they are doing the smart thing here and not announcing it just yet.
If you are someone that is going, I really wish Labour would release their tax policy and their financial policy and how they're going to run things, if you're missing that, just read the green one. It's really good. Like
True.
And I think this should almost be like every time that Nicola tries to throw shade at Labour because of their tax policy, Chloe Schwarbrick should pop up in the background and go, can I talk to you about ours? Can I talk to you about how I fully costed it out? That has been independently verified and it's a way to a better future? Can we do that? Just absolutely body her with that at every time. Like, I cannot overstate this. I know I'm cheerleading a little bit. I fully believe that the green financial position is the best way forward for this country going forward. It knows where there's extra funds. It knows where it wants to position those funds. It knows how many people it's going to benefit. It knows the effect that it's going to have on the climate challenges of the past. It is a serious financial document for identifying the fact that our economy is unproductive because of housing. So how do you get people trying to hide their money in housing? You tax housing. And then you have a fair playing field that if you've got money that you want to grow, then you have a choice. You can buy a house and gamble on the housing market, or you could put money into New Zealand businesses and product productivity. That's what we want. We want to even that playing field. So, yeah. Main takeaway here is if you haven't looked at it, go and have a look at it. If there's a hole in your life that could be filled by a financial positioning statement that Labour could release, just look at the green one.
Yes, fun times, fun times. Well, we have probably some super chats to get through, do we? From Chewie! Chewie! What have you done, Chewie? No!
I really need to rebind that button.
How many years has it been? How long have we done this for?
It only happens sporadically every month.
Hasn't happened for a while. It's,
with the 2 in one night. Ukraine has lost about half the support from the left after it was shown 69 of them were pro-Israel, only 1% support Palestine. I find this a really interesting narrative. I don't know if I agree. I think Ukraine has a complicated history with the Jews out of World War II. I also think that they have a position where they would dearly love to get their hands on some Israeli defensive weapons like Iron Dome to protect their cities. So I am not going to criticize Ukraine for putting itself first. I'm also of the view that I think Russia kicked off the whole Israel-Gaza situation as a distraction. And it's probably one of the most effective pieces of geopolitics or espionage that we've seen in the last 80 years. So, yeah. Wooming, 349. Nikki Nobo's guilty of the most expensive text ever. Yes, I think a lot of people have forgotten that we cancelled these ferries via text message. Just the worst.
So diplomatic, so very elegant.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our biggest trading partners and historical allies. Yeah, no, great. Talking about our financial rating, it got upgraded under Jacinda. That is absolutely correct. Yep. Echoing what I said before, James Black is saying the biggest economic risk to New Zealand is private debt. Yep. Peter, Nicola Willis puts on some robes, lights some candles, stands at an altar to Milton Friedman and invokes Ruth Richardson in performing her duties. A truly frightful scene. Over Red Rover, Nikki's Ferries, never mind, and Luxon's CRL. Shout out to Ems for putting in the mahi and earning her keep around here. I love you. Kiss, kiss.
You're welcome. I'm glad I can very quickly Google and find an article which proves my point, and I can read a few sentences which are slightly incoherent and make you believe what I've just told you. I'm very good at that.
Mr. Arvids with an absolutely deserved $5 there. Do you have a fiscal hole that needs filling? Fill it with green stuff. So I'm guessing Arvids now has a communications role with the New Zealand Green Party. Congratulations.
Very smart. Very, very smart. Smart. Okay. Thank you for the super chats. Our last story tonight is Judith Collins making an apology for mixing up her messages and accidentally saying that the average income of a teacher was $140,000, which is, I can tell you, an absolute lie. So she came out and said, "Oh no, oops! I made an oopsie. I didn't mean to say that." But also, she then also, in the same breath, told the unions to, where is it?
Stop having
can't
little
find
tantrums.
Tantrums. That's the word she used. Yes. So in one breath, she's little. Come back to the bargaining table and to not have little tantrums. So she apologized for spreading misinformation, but then also said that they're having little tantrums because they want pay, reasonable, fair pay. Why I don't know. It's just follows what we've seen time and time again. But the secondary school teachers are on strike tomorrow. And there's a wee article that I saw on TV1 that kind of just explains a little bit about what's happening. And the other thing as well that was in the news is that the unions that had pay equity claims have taken the government to court for taking away their claims, basically. With little time to consult and all of that fun stuff. All right, so I'm gonna play this for you. That was coherent. This is why I shouldn't speak while I'm also setting up the clip, because none of it makes sense, and I really should have just said, "Hey Chewie, what do you think?" It is very much that. I should have just said, "Hey Chewie, can you speak for 2 seconds while I quickly put this up?" All right, Crusher Collins apologizes, kind of, not really.
Public Service Minister Judith Collins has apologised for misleading the public after claiming some teachers get paid more than they do. High school teachers are getting set to ditch the classroom tomorrow to strike for better pay. Here's senior political reporter Benedict Collins.
Our high school teachers will be striking tomorrow for better pay. Outside St Mary's College, this family reckoned good on them.
Please get out there, support our teachers. Our teachers, it's really important that we get behind their mahi, because otherwise no one can. Under this government, even pay equity, look at that. They deserve.
But think of
Furious
the parents and the
yeah.
angry. They're so furious, and the students are so furious about this. Trust me, they're furious.
They deserve the amount of pay that they want.
The government and the union haven't been able to strike a deal.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to engage in some industrial action. The government hasn't come to the party.
Ministers called the strike a political stunt last week, arguing teachers are already well paid.
On average, someone with 10 years experience is on about $140,000, plus, of course, all the time that they have on leave.
But that's not true. Less than 2%.
The bullshit about leave? Go fuck yourself, Judith.
I brought that up with a teacher friend of mine once at a party, that one of the best things about being a teacher must be all the leave that they get, because they get all the school holidays. I almost got stabbed that night. That person was incensed about it. I love that she's saying that she was misinformed. It was a lie. Judith Collins tried to lie to you that all you had to be was a teacher that had worked in the industry for 10 years and you were on nearly $150,000 a year. And almost as that had left her mouth, every teacher in the country was going, "What the fuck?" And there were so many examples of teachers going, "I have worked in this industry for 12 years and I am on X amount of dollars. I have worked in..." Who the fuck is she talking to? Where is that pay scale? Oh, it's a really specific position. Someone that's been a principal for a long... The very tippy top of the pay scale is 147,000. Isn't this very similar to the tactic that Simeon Brown has used on the teachers? That they want to turn around and go, "These people are paid way more than you. How dare they ask for more money?" And I don't think they're getting the response that they want from the public, because nurses and teachers are valued.
Really?
So where do you go now, Judith?
Just something on the holidays too. Something I thought about the other day, just quickly. If teachers didn't get the holiday breaks, which they're not really holidays, I can tell you now, my mother was a teacher, and I can tell you how much shit I missed out on because she's a teacher. And while I was on holiday, she was not. I'm also married to a teacher. I can tell you now, he was working on our honeymoon. During the school holidays, during his break, he was marking papers on our honeymoon. So go fuck yourself with these holidays. But also, kids can't learn for more than like 10-week blocks. They get exhausted. Imagine expecting a child of 6 years old to every week of the year, like we do as adults, to go to school and learn. They can't. I bet there are papers. I bet $100 there are papers and researchers that says that children cannot do that. So in a way, teachers are forced to have a break. But I can tell you now, it's not a break. They are exhausted and they do take a break, but it's not a holiday.
You'll confirm this, Emily. Like, I've got friends that are teachers, and those holidays that the kids are off, they are doing their lesson planning. They're doing all of their setup and gearing up for the next term. So if Judith is just going, what, these motherfuckers are skiing or going to the beach and with their massive disposable incomes while you're having to go to work, is just bullshit. But there are so many teachers out there, and all of those teachers have friends and family. This is a lie that was never going to last. Like, anybody that is repeating this on social media just has no friends or family that are teachers, that are just not in the, they believe that, they just do not know a teacher, haven't interacted with one ever. It is a lie that was not going to last more than 5 minutes after she said it, and now she's trying to cover her ass. She lied to you, New Zealand.
Carry on.
% of high school teachers earn over 140k.
I was quite surprised by that, because I've been teaching 20 years and I've been a head of department and I've been a dean, and I've been nowhere near close to those numbers. And so, look, it's really disappointing when they use that kind of misinformation to muddy the waters.
Did you mislead the public about how much teachers are getting paid?
No, actually, the press release is completely correct. I just mixed up my messages a bit, and so I've apologised for that.
When you make a mistake.
So, just to be clear, she actually didn't apologise for getting the number wrong. She doubled down and said the press release was correct. I got my messages wrong. So she hasn't actually apologised or corrected herself that the numbers were wrong. Am I wrong? Is that what I heard? Anyways.
And you say something wrong, you always correct yourself, and that's what she's done. That's what I would do too if I was her.
Labor's less charitable.
It was really harmful, her comments, in the lead up to the strikes and the negotiations, to be spreading such misinformation.
The Public Service Commissioner is leading negotiations. He's accusing the secondary school union of grandstanding for not accepting the offer. He says teachers could be between $2,000 and $7,000 better off a year. Sir Brian Roach says we don't have a bottomless pot of taxpayer money. While the typical high school teacher earns 100k, for comparison, Sir Brian Roach was paid $400,000 over the 8 months between November and June.
The government's made teachers a 1% pay increase offer. That's less than the rate of inflation. So it means if you're a teacher, your pay is actually going to go backwards under this government.
The PPTA expecting big turnouts at tomorrow's strikes.
I am really thankful of that jab and the comparison of how much that person earned, not in a year, not in a term, in a 6-month-ish period. I think it was like 8 months? $400,000 in 8 months. Like, I love that. If they had said something like he earned $140,000 or something like that, I would have been like, meh, $400,000, it's a lot more than the $100,000 that the typical teacher makes.
Yeah, that might not even be full-time work as well. That it might have been 8 months. It's not necessarily working a 40-hour week every week for those times. Like, Judith Collins is on, what, 300 grand? So...
a term, I believe.
Look, we know that this government...
It's more than that.
We know that this
That's some
government...
shit.
We know that this government doesn't like unions. And they are currently going up against two of our biggest unions simultaneously, and the parallels between them are startlingly clear. That they thought that offering someone less than the rate of inflation, effectively a pay cut, was somehow going to be okay. And that then they're reduced to saying things like, well, there's not a bottomless pot of money. You know, one of the things that Pat has on a soundboard is Judith Collins going, well, if the money's needed, then the money will be found. Guess what, Judith? Money needs to be found. You've got a bottomless pot of money for the Defence Forces. And I'm not even going to be the one that says, hey, look, there's not money that needs to be spent on the Defence Forces. Money needs to be spent on the Defence Forces as well. But her attitude of, if the money is needed, it will be found, and we have no money to give you, so stop asking. Take your 1% and be thankful that you get, what was the bottom of that? $2,000 extra a year? That's bullshit. And if you can't
it's
see
like
why that
$11
makes
per
people
paycheck
angry,
or some shit.
Please. Wow.
Yeah.
They deserve this strike action. And look, for the union organisers, and look, I think it's going this way already, right? We've got a teachers' strike tomorrow. We have a nurses' strike coming up again. And these strikes seem to be getting closer and closer to being on the same fucking day, don't they?
I think as well the primary teachers union are currently on a no meetings strike, where basically they stop work at 3 p.m. and they won't do any meetings after work.
They've had their pay equity
current
things squashed.
Yeah.
You know, a good friend of mine is an early childhood teacher. He's not involved in this strike action, obviously, but they had their pay equity claim was one of the ones that got absolutely nuked from orbit with no warning. So those guys are pissed off. You know, it's the government did something, and it has a follow-on effect. It has a response, and I think they just want the unions to just shut up for some reason, and that's not what unions do. It's not the union's task. I also love that National's thing of like, well, the unions are making the teachers do this. Do you know what the union is made of? The union is made of teachers.
Really?
Like, that is the job of a union, is to represent its members. Like, they seem to want to make the position that the union is forcing teachers to do this. The union membership would have voted on doing this.
Yeah. So makes a good point. My point is always, if you don't want to do the job, then pay someone to do it. If that means paying them more to do it, then pay them more to do it. Because I don't see anyone other than teachers putting their hand up to teach your kids. And trust me, I know a lot of parents. They would.
A relief teacher.
Oh, fuck me. Jesus. I know a lot of people, and when they hear, hey, do you want to be a teacher? They go, fuck off. And I wonder why. It's not exactly the easiest job, and you have to be a very special person to do it. So pay them.
Well, I haven't got a text from Pat, but I'm sure it is.
Oh no, he went to bed
It's very
long
close.
ago. He sent a Facebook message that said he's high on flu meds and he's off to bed. So it sounds like it's starting to kick in. So you might
Thanks
have to deal with me for a couple of nights, but we'll see.
Thanks to all
Let's
of our
hope he's on the
Patreon
rise.
supporters for Pat's flu meds fund.
Yeah, he's
That's
high
what
on
that's
flu
going
meds.
towards. Yeah.
Right, I think that's up for the night, unless you've got anything.
Yep.
And we'll get through super chats as well. But unless you had something to share with the class.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything further to chuck in the pot tonight. We'll do those super chats and then we'll hit the bricks.
Sounds good.
Others, pay our teachers, pay our nurses, tax landlords. Look, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. That's the thing. If that's
Simple yet
Labour's
effective.
next policy, that's all it needs to be. Yes, we are increasing taxes. No, it's not going to go after you. It's going after the ultra wealthy. We're going to take that money. We're going to give it to teachers, nurses. We're going to give you all of these things to make your life better. That is a winning policy. I hear Judith is going knocking to loafer witness. And Crusher crushes herself. And that's all the super chats tonight.
That's our picture. Oh, no, somebody's... Mr. Arvids again with his endless $2 pot. I wonder if Pat's grateful for...
Oh, it's true. Pseudoephedrine back.
Well, sometimes it hurts to be wrong, but sure there was other things you could have used. Anyways, I don't know shit. I will play out the credits if I know what I'm doing, which I totally do.
Look at how smooth
Go.
this is.
It's always smooth, Chewie.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, either this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by both Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Thanks for joining us tonight for this Tuesday edition of Big Hairy News. Chewie, anything to say before we go?
Keep being awesome. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, hopefully Pat will be back with you tomorrow, but otherwise you'll have to put up with Pink Pat for another night, so I guess we'll see. Have a wonderful night all. Sleep well. Jenny.
Cheers, fam.
Moist.